I've looked through the list of your albums, and I believe the first was released in 2007, and then practically every year you've released something in some kind of way. So what kept you going? What made you so prolific in your writing?
I think I had already done so much work as a player that I just would do one thing and move on to the next, like kind of quickly. And then, that album would come out and I'd already be on to the next thing. Okay. And it kind of is continuing that way. A little bit less so now because I'm playing, the songs are a little bit more involved and I'm touring the actual songs. But in the past, I would just kind of do things quickly and record them also quickly and then just keep kind of moving, rambling like through what I knew, And
still, do you look back a lot at previous albums? For instance, before starting on the current album, did you look back at Way Out Weather?
And you mean like try to think about how to proceed?
Yeah, just to reflect on what you've done and then see.
Yeah, I feel like I'm trying to kind of continue like a certain like sort of trajectory about even like sonically the music has changed. If you hear the new album, like it's sort of gone up another notch with volume and playing is a bit more like pushing it sonically. And when I listen back to the old album, I always think about ways to improve and what I can kind of do differently. And for me, it's kind of like just improving as a craft, and I'm constantly trying to work on it,
And part of that, you've worked with a lot of people, perhaps most famous Kurt Vile. So what do you take away from working with all these different types of artists? Do you incorporate certain elements that they use, or do you study how they do things as well?
I don't think I study how their process is per se, but sometimes I'm impressed how people can be prolific and how people can write certain songs that sound effortless, but also at the same time like really powerful. That's not easy to do. I feel like a lot of singers and songwriters lyrically, they try a little like almost too hard where they don't let their guard down and they're like maybe putting themselves, in a position to kind of over-explain things or be a little bit over-dramatic.
Right.
And for me, when a song, you can't quite pinpoint it, like it's simple, but it's like something you would never think of, but it's like beautiful in a way. And not a lot of people have that ability. Kurt definitely has that ability. And I don't think I have it, but when I hear those kinds of songs, I get in, that inspires me to just dig a little deeper within myself and think of things and kind of keep them as like thoughts in the moment and see if they work,
Yeah, do you need to be in a certain mood to write or a certain mindset in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I really am trying to compile the songs, I gather, because I travel a lot and I write, I think I remember things that people say or maybe someone I met and like I get inspired, by their story. So I'll say like, okay, this guy, dog trainer, he owns a pet shop, or like the things that I remember from him. And then, I kind of keep all these notes and images. I take a lot of photographs. So when I sit down to write, I tend to just kind of like surround myself with everything and really think about what I want to do. And I give myself time where I have nothing, like I dedicate that time to doing that. And, it's a process. It's almost like I'm not a writer per se, but thinking about maybe a novelist where they have all these scenes and they're trying to kind of put a cohesive like story together,
Yeah, I wrote down, let's see, I wrote down one sentence I thought, but maybe I didn't. That you see yourself, it was from the bio, that you see yourself more as a narrator than a diarist. And then what you mentioned just now is quite interesting. Would you ever, or did you ever think about writing a novel or a short story or something like that?
I don't know. Well, I don't have confidence as a writer per se, but I do like telling a story through songs. I really enjoy that process. So that's, in a sense, that's kind of my way of telling stories. I like telling stories. I like reading a lot. For me, I respect people who write short stories and novels because it's hard work, you know. But for me, I like, you know, incorporating those kinds of ideas that writers use for, and poets as well, like, you know, giving things, sort of putting words together and not necessarily having this kind of linear thread and seeing how people interpret the, you know, the lines and things, and at the same time telling a story that provides more imagery for me,
right?
You know.
How much of yourself do you put in your songs?
I think, I mean, it's a lot of, some of the songs are about other, like, stories about other people. And then I feel like some of the songs are a bit more observational, like a person watching something unfold or witnessing something or feeling a certain way. And I try to keep, like, overly kind of personal or confessional songs. Like, that's not really how I like to pursue songwriting, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. But I definitely sing about things that I'm like feeling, but I don't like to overstate things, you know, like, I'm a 30-something middle-class white guy and life is hard and aren't I cool, you know.
Right.
That's not what I want to do, you know. I'm more inspired by other people's stories and people who are kind of living, like, unnoticed. Some of those people have more interesting stories to tell, you know.
What was one story then that you picked up over maybe the last year or so that ended up on the album, or one that had to end up
on the
album?
new record?
Yeah.
Let me think about that. Go through the track list here.
Or we can also just look at the first. Do you remember what the first song was that kind of developed?
Well, I could tell you the first song on the new album is called Ancient Jewels.
Okay.
And I basically, it was a bit of like a day. Some of the songs were like a bit. I kind of like got a little bit more into like daydreaming and coming up with these sort of scenarios. And the song, I had this sort of thought about. It was almost I guess it was a dream, but it you know, and it's a simple one. It's just like being on the road and being lost without a GPS. And I was reading this writer named Joseph Mitchell, who used to write sort of very observational sort of stories, and he wrote for the New Yorker, and there's a collection of his stories. And he wrote about, well, in one story about just, you know, walking around New York City and meeting this guy who owned like a junk shop who was a bit of a mystic, and he was really sort of strange and interesting and a little bit like, you know, made him feel uncomfortable, but this guy, Joseph Mitchell, wanted to hang out with him and know more about him because he was fascinating. And, you know, those kinds of characters are interesting to me. And I was thinking about, I almost kind of even knew, I mean, he wrote this a long time ago, but I almost knew exactly what he was feeling and what he was saying, because I see people like that in the city, and I'm always interested in knowing a little bit more, digging.
Do you approach them then? When you see
Sometimes,
these people?
so,
Okay.
and also I have this like magnetism for like kind of like people that are a little bit nuts, and so sometimes it's just, you know, it just comes.
Right.
But the story, I was thinking about what, you know, sort of a what if for the first song, and I was like, you know, all right, I was thinking about this character in my mind, Ancient Jules, who is a similar guy, you know, long white beard, and he lives in a basement, and he was sort of our guru in a sense, and we were on tour, and our van breaks down, and you know, we don't have GPS, and we kind of consult this guy, like, what do we do, you know, and he just tells us to just like, you know, don't, you know, just, you don't have to like just trust your instincts, you don't have to like look at a map, just go where you want to go, and eventually we end up back, we leave and go in the opposite direction to where we're supposed to go, and then we end up meeting him and like hanging out in his basement and listening, and he like plays us records all night. So it's a very simple sort of, you know, childish kind of story, but that's, you know, conceptually that's sort of what I was thinking about.
But that notion then of trusting your instincts and following your gut, is that something that you use then as well for or in your approach to music? And
it's been something I've been learning how to use a little more, and trying to let my guard down, because I played guitar so much, and I had this really complicated, in my own mind, knowledge of the guitar, and I was like overplaying and just everything was, I was just extending myself too far and obsessing over lyrics, and just it just felt like everything was complicated, and it's taken me a few like years and albums to kind of, you know, maybe simplify things, and you know, if I like write a thought, like to keep it and say like, okay, it might sound strange or childish or simplistic, but it paints a picture, and you know, kind of trying to get more of an ability to like trust my thought process and the spontaneity of it, you know.
In a similar sense then, because you mentioned that you started singing relatively late, so did that come easy to you as well, or did that your voice, or did the confidence in your voice, was it there from the beginning?
No, it wasn't there. It took a long time. It's still, I feel like I've even improved since the last album.
Okay.
But yeah, that was something that I started doing, and slowly, as I played more shows, and as there was like a real necessity for me to sing louder, you know, even just coming into a cafe where half the people are talking and like yelping, like that guy, you have to learn how to like not lose your cool and sing louder and project your voice. And then also playing with a band, when now we're playing electric guitars, it's like, you know, you have to sing louder. And I also knew that there was room for improvement, and being on the road and singing a lot was always like the best way I've been able to like figure out